manageable.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here. And welcome to this candidate forum for County Legislative District 3. And I'm grateful for you for inviting the League of Women Voters of Tompkins County to moderate. The League is proud to be a non-partisan organization, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members of the League and the public. This, of course, includes elections. The League does take action to support or oppose specific governmental policies based on positions developed through member study and agreement. And over some issues that can take many years. And it took many years, a long time ago, for us to support abortion rights and Planned Parenthood. We are pleased to be here tonight, giving you the opportunity to ask the candidates questions about issues that concern you. There are cards available for you to write your questions, and I hope legibly, at the back of the room. Either put your hand up if you've got a card and we'll come and collect it, or bring it to the table here. And we will review them and I will ask the candidates. Questions that are abusive or for only one of the candidates will not be asked. And duplicates will be combined together. We ask you to be respectful of each other and the candidates at all times, and to refrain from applause or heckling at any time. Please turn off your cell phones and recording devices. The League is live streaming this event, and a complete recording will be available on YouTube via our website tomorrow or the next day. There are some people here I would like to thank. One of them is Ted, who does our technical stuff, and without which we couldn't have the meeting. I'd like to thank GIAC for allowing us to use their facility, which is terrific. For my volunteers on the right and Pam. And also, apparently, I have to apologize for Ted wandering around with another camera. So if you're worried about the back of your hair, turn and face him. Now, each candidate has 3 minutes to make an opening statement. And then at the end of the forum, we'll have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer each question. And they are allowed to make up to 3 30-second rebuttals to the other candidate's answers. But they must hold up their red card to do so and not interrupt. And now I'd like to introduce our candidates to you. On the far left is Iris Packman. And on my left is Pierre Saint-Perez. Iris will be making the first opening statement and also the first closing statement. And Pierre will be answering the first question, and then they take it in turns. And now it's over to you, Iris.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, thank you everyone for being here and for watching online. I'm really happy that we're able to have this forum, so thanks for putting this together. It's really important for folks to be able to hear from the candidates and be able to make an informed decision. I'm grateful we could be in this lovely space from GIAC too. So I'm Iris Packman. I live in Bell Sherman. I grew up here. My kids go to Bell Sherman just like I did. They had the same gym teacher I did, so hyper local. I've been here for about 25 years of my life and have been really involved in the community. I also work at Cornell. I'm a faculty member at the Climate Jobs Institute. I'm a labor and climate lawyer, so I work on policy that addresses the dual crises of both inequality and climate change. And so those are kind of existential crises of our time. And I am thinking every day about how we can create policies at the local level, state level, to address those issues. And I've also been involved in our community for a long time. I'm currently the vice president of the board of directors at the Ithaca Children's Garden. And my sister just walked in, so I'm happy. I've been working to help make sure people have access to childcare. We provide scholarships for anyone who needs it to be able to have preschool, summer camp, and after school. It's a really much needed resource. And, you may know me from seeing me around the neighborhood with my dog or my kids. But I've also been involved in the city government a bit. I was appointed by Mayor Lewis to the city's Sustainability and Climate Justice Commission, where I've served helping implement Ithaca's Green New Deal. And I just wanted to kind of flag, why I'm running a bit. Neighbors have asked me in the past to run, and it's something that it feels like in these times, I have no choice but to do it. It's time for people to stand up, and this is something that I feel like I can do. We local officials are the first line of defense. And, we've already seen Trump threatening our city and our county. And I think as someone who has experience with standing up for the little guy, standing up for immigrants, standing up for low-wage workers, for climate-based organizations. This is what I do day in and day out. I know how to be there for people, and I will stand firm. You can trust me that as a legislator, I will be there. And I know that it's personal at this point, right? It's not just this idea of a threat. This is our neighbors. These are our friends, our classmates, and our family. And so I want you to know that you can trust me. I will be here and I will be efficient and available. And, if they come for any of us, they come for all of us. So they're going to have to go through me. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Pierre Saint-Perez. I'm running to represent the 3rd Legislative District. I currently represent the 3rd Ward, which has the exact same boundaries on Common Council. Now, I grew up here in Ithaca. My mother immigrated here from India, my father from Venezuela, and they built a family. They had a kid. I graduated from LACS in 2017. During growing up in Ithaca, I became engaged in our local governance. I served on both county and city committees trying to address various issues, and was apprenticed to a member of Common Council. These were extraordinary opportunities. I also represented LACS to the Board of Education as a student representative. I then went to college, studied public policy, engineering and public policy, and ethics, history, and public policy. Came back to Ithaca and got a law degree from Cornell. When I came back, I found more ways to plug in and help. I was on the Tides Committee trying to address homelessness in the city, and I was elected to Common Council. For the past year and a half, I have represented the city of Ithaca to the Tompkins County Council of Governments and been one of Common Council's liaisons to the Tompkins County Legislature. I've also been liaison to the Sustainability and Climate Justice Commission, where my opponent serves. Now, I got involved on coming back in local governance because I think it's a way to make real change. I think it's a way to help people. And I think that Ithaca is becoming unaffordable. Right? We are facing a cost of living crisis, and folks who grew up here, our community, our children, cannot afford very often to stay here. I keep on seeing people I grew up with leaving Ithaca, not because they want to, because they can't afford to stay. I think most of us are feeling the pressure. Now, there is no single solution to our cost of living challenges, but what I do know is that if we are going to address them, we need to address them together, not the city of Ithaca, not one of the towns or one of the villages, but our whole community together, because the borders of Ithaca don't end at the borders of the city of Ithaca. To serve you for the past year and a half has been the greatest honor of my life, and I hope to continue serving you.
Thank you. Now, the first question, which we will start with you, Pierre. what have you learned from knocking on doors this spring? What issues do you hear about most often?
I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I hear about affordability a great deal. Folks in our communities on Bell Sherman and South Hill, like there are folks on South Hill who are struggling to afford to stay. I've knocked on many doors of people who are saying that they can't afford to remain in our community. And I find that heartbreaking every time I knock on a door and I see someone who was a long-term member of this community is no longer there. Sometimes it's intergenerational, and houses that have been in a family for 50 years, they can no longer afford to stay in. Obviously, there are so many more issues. There are rats, there's water flooding, and so much more. I'm out of time.
Yeah, knocking doors, and I've knocked hundreds of doors. I've seen and heard from folks about affordability, certainly, specifically people who see their assessments going up and their taxes going up to the point where they're saying, you know, I've lived in this house for decades and now I can't afford to live here, especially if I'm on a fixed income. That's a real challenge. I remember talking to someone who had just received a bill from this, or a statement from the city that he was going to have to replace his municipal water line, the part that connected from his house to the city's line, and it was $8,000. And he said, I don't know how to pay this. My family and I are on, you know, food stamps. We don't have that kind of money. What are we going to do? I also knocked doors of someone who was holding his newborn child and said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've only got so much leave and I don't know where I'm going to put this kid in childcare that'll feel safe. So I think childcare is another issue. And then certainly flooding, the water issues, especially in the sort of lower South Hill and in Bell Sherman, where runoff has caused erosion.
So there are a lot of questions here which relate to that last questions. I'm going to start with this one on homelessness. What are your thoughts on how to make housing more affordable for working families and the middle class? And you start this time.
Okay. So I think it's really important that we look critically at how our properties are assessed and how the taxation policies are applied, because I think there are some inequities in the outcomes. And one thing that we can do certainly is to try to deepen our tax base and make sure that we're attracting more businesses and building more housing so that can spread the burden a bit more. We also need to be building more affordable housing that is great for first-time home buyers, but also for folks who are downsizing, who maybe are empty nesters and want to stay in the city near their friends and their resources they're used to, near public transportation, and maybe they're not driving as much, but they don't want to have to be out in the county and they don't have a nice place to be, an accessible one bedroom, for example. So I think those are some things we need to look at to be able to make these places available for folks.
So I've been working on this for some time, and I can tell you, like, and when I say some time, I was on a county committee trying to address housing in 2015. I've been thinking about this a lot, and my dream and what I really hope that we can move towards is building walkable, livable communities along our TCAT routes, right? We have overstuffed commuter ways, and it is non-viable. We were never designed to be this sort of commuter city. I hope we can bring people who are working here in Ithaca, but living out in Binghamton, living multiple counties away, into our community more effectively. And I don't think we can fit that within the city of Ithaca. I mean, we've been trying, right? The city of Ithaca's boundaries are not large enough to address these issues directly.
Yes. 30 seconds for rebuttal.
So I do think that there's still opportunities to build within the city. And I think that's important because it is near services. Building out in the county is very costly. Having spoken with developers about this very issue, the cost of extending the municipal sewer lines, for example, is prohibitive for developers. And there's a real opportunity to build more density in the city. There are many places that are still have room for development and that have are much more appealing to both residents and to developers, where it can actually be financially feasible to invest in those properties.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Which is exactly why we need to look at expanding our sewer infrastructure beyond where it is right now in order to enable development. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be sufficient to address this issue. And it's a great issue. The issue is that people want to live in Ithaca. The issue is that we're doing too much right. We need to expand outwards, but in a way that is deliberate and thought through.
What is the county's responsibility regarding homelessness? And how will you work with the local municipalities and the city to address this issue?
So as I'm sure all of you know, the county is empowered with human services support, whereas the city has land use authority. What this means is that in order to address an issue like homelessness, the two municipalities need to be working in near perfect harmony. I can say, as having been liaison for a year and a half, the two municipalities are often not in perfect harmony. And one of my real hopes is to serve as a translator between someone who's been on Common Council and is serving on Legislature. We need to work together. We need to work together in a way that is effective and with constant intercommunication. We always say we want to work together, but the organizations operate differently, and that can lead to miscommunications in places you really don't expect them.
So the county is taking steps and has purchased a property on Cherry Street, which was the Found building, and is building a homeless shelter, which is a fantastic step. And I think what's really important about what's being done is that it is not simply a shelter, it has wraparound services, and that is what people need to reduce recidivism and to address the root of the problem. So we need support of mental health care, we need support for addiction treatment. These are the kinds of things, and social services, frankly. So all of that is important steps toward helping address the problem and create a long-lasting solution. I think that we also need to work with our state representatives, and that's something I would be very much to ensure that they help us get more funding that we can use. There's lots of grants and other money that we can apply for that will help address the homelessness issue.
What are the impacts of federal program cuts going to be on the county? And what do you propose to advocate doing about it? And what is the responsibility of the legislature to deal with the program cuts?
So fundamentally, as a local government, our job is to take care of our people. And so I think of the hierarchy of needs, we need to make sure people are safe, they are housed, they are fed. They fix that Josh Riley's folks had put out about 16,000 county residents are on Medicaid right now, and 5,000 or more are at risk of losing coverage. That's almost 5% of our county. That's 1 in 20 of your neighbors who could lose health insurance. It's absolutely devastating. I think that we have some great programs like the Ithaca Free Clinic and Reach Medical that are already providing fantastic services, and that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to increase support for them. We can apply for grants, again, work with our state partners and our federal partners to try to bring resources where they need to be so we can really serve the people who are going to be most impacted by these cuts.
In the end, I don't think any of us truly know what it's going to look like when the federal government just stops doing what we've relied on them doing for so long. Right? It's going to have funding implications. And yes, I agree completely that our obligation is to support and protect the people of this county. But the scale of federal services that we rely on as a community, it's so much larger than even those specific cuts. I believe that it is incredibly important that we ensure and do what we can to support everyone in our community and to, when we can, substitute for what frankly should be being done by a higher level of government. Now, obviously, I'd prefer if the state did that, but we're the last line for a lot of folks.
Thank you. What are some ways that you see the county and the city working together? And how are they working already? Can you give some specifics on how greater collaboration might be important or useful?
Absolutely. So in terms of our need for greater collaboration, I believe this is critical. Look, the fact of the matter is the county and the city are serving the same people, but because of the structure of our local governance, serving in very different ways. We often talk past each other, and I think this is really clear during our reimagining public safety process. What we need to do, I think, moving forward is have strong collaboration in terms of, what are our housing needs as a whole community, not within the city, not within an individual town, as a whole community, and make sure that we all have bought into, agreed to those needs, and agreed on how we're going to address them, all of us together. I think the same applies to numerous other issues.
We are in a unique situation where we have this robust city, but then also this large county structure and a town of Ithaca. And so we do need to think about how we're cooperating. And even with the school district as well, which is another area where I think there hasn't been as much cooperation as there could and should be. But I think one of the examples of a need for better cooperation is looking at EMS and making sure we have medical services for folks in rural areas, as well as in the city, and getting the rapid response out to everyone who needs it. And I also think that there needs to be more coordination, certainly around development. I know that the IDA has both city and county representatives on it. And I think working together to have a comprehensive view of how we are going to attack the various development challenges that are coming in, as well as what those tax abatements look like. I think that's really important that we're working together.
Yeah, I just want to expand on that. That's right. I believe, really should have centralized municipal emergency service at the county level. That is to say, we should have county ambulance. We've been working on this at TCOG for some time now. The county's looking into it, but the way that it has ended up shaking out is, I think, inequitable and doesn't lead to the best results. The best results come when we put our heads together and work together on all issues.
The county is looking at a living wage for all employees. What factors should we consider in looking at this? And what do you consider to be a living wage?
It's an issue close to my heart as a person who's worked in the labor movement for decades. And we have seen the cost of living go up. It's not just your imagination, or eggs aren't just, the most expensive thing. We've seen from the end of 2023 to the beginning of 2025, so about 15 months, the ILR school put out a report and found that our living wage went up 34.5%. So can you imagine? No one's salary went up 34.5%. And so that is a target. The number that they set as a livable wage for a single adult with no children is $24.82 an hour. Now, if you add in childcare, I asked the researchers about this, and they said, oh, we couldn't even put that in there because it would make it so expensive. Childcare, roughly $2,000 a month per child, right? So that's going to be unobtainable. So I think it's great the county is investigating the living wage. I think that's a good start. And then we need to look into our own house, right? Are we paying our own employees a living wage?
One of the things that really hits me is that so many of our county staff don't live in the county because they can't afford to, right? Like, cost of living is a crisis. And when we say that we want county staff to have a living wage, what I think that is saying is that we want county staff to be able to be in our county. I think that is a necessity. I think if someone's going to be working on behalf of our community, we should be inviting them into our community. In terms of how to calculate and what should the living wage be, I defer to the community experts who do that math. I am comfortable trusting the experts.
Thank you. You've talked about the city and the county working together. What are your thoughts regarding the rural legislative districts? Groton, Enfield, Newfield, Danby, where we were last night, Caroline. How will you include them in your discussions and your considerations of your work on the legislature?
I mean, I think of them as neighbors, right? I do not have a closed mind about what is and is not part of Ithaca. I think we are Ithacans, and that extends into our rural areas. If we want to address issues that affect our rural areas more disastrously, it requires coordination across the whole county. If we want to address issues that affect our more populated areas more disastrously, it also requires coordination across the board. I look forward to working with both legislators and local government members across our urban and rural municipalities, as I have done on the Council of Governments, which, if you've never watched a TCOG meeting, I don't blame you. It's somewhat unknown, but it is wonderful to see these governments working together effectively.
Well, I think the beauty of having 14 and soon 16 legislators, each from a different district, is that we learn from each other. We work together. We're not coming in guns blazing. This is my agenda, and I'm not going to listen to my colleagues. It's very much a collaborative experience. I was told that one former legislator wisely said that the county legislature is like a 4-year-long Thanksgiving dinner. So it's your extended family, and you got to sit there with them and work with them for 4 years. So I think that's a good way to think about it, right? We are learning from them. I have lived in Brooktondale. I have lived in the more rural areas and in the more urban areas, and there are just real differences about the issues that matter to people. But I also think it's important for us to open our hearts and understand. For example, in our county, 20% of residents live in poverty. And if you live in the city and maybe in our district, you maybe don't see that. But that is a reality for people. And so I think it's important that we keep all those perspectives in mind as we're making decisions.
The legislature recently discussed the problems of algal blooms on Cayuga Lake. Do you support initiating a study to better understand the causes of this major problem and its possible solutions? And will you support putting those solutions into effect?
Absolutely. As someone who grew up here and enjoyed going to Taganic to swim, it's been a real change with my kids to say in the summer, we have to check the forecast first. We got to check the site that tracks the harmful algal blooms before we can go swimming. This is a real change. It's a threat to tourism. It's a threat to people building and expanding our tax base. It's also obviously endangering both humans and animals that are interacting with that water. So I think it's really important that we understand why this is happening and address it before we lose vital tourism dollars, as well as just folks being able to come out and enjoy this natural area, which is a huge part of why most of us live here.
Absolutely. Our lake, it's why our community is here. It is a core of what makes Ithaca Ithaca. And you know, I capsized out of canoe into Cayuga Lake in high school once. It was March. Not a great time. But being able to partake of the lake and of our natural resources, I think, is critical. Ensuring the health of our natural spaces is critical. And if we're going to do that effectively, we need to know what's going on and we need to address it as best we can.
Beyond being a sanctuary county, what are county, what are some steps you will take to protect targeted immigrant communities if elected?
Obviously, this is an issue that is extremely important to me. And I think there are two sides to this. One of them is governmental. I do believe that our governments can do more to protect our immigrant groups. You know, Ithaca is the city with the highest percentage of residents who weren't born in the United States in our country. I think that's beautiful. I think we should acknowledge that and provide more services in more languages. And I think we should have a municipal ID card system whereby we can provide government IDs to folks whether or not they have citizenship. While these wouldn't help with federal attacks directly, they would help with situations where you need an ID, and there's more of those than you'd think. Living with dignity as an immigrant is incredibly important.
I worked as an immigration attorney in law school. I worked in a clinic and clerked for an immigration judge, and I helped people who were fleeing persecution. I helped people who were in this country without documentation and were survivors of domestic violence. It's an issue that's close to my heart in terms of the work that I've done, and obviously standing up just for human rights. We, I think, need to work closely with our sister cities and counties. Tompkins County is one of 15 New York counties that has a sanctuary status. We're not alone. We shouldn't feel like we're an island. And we need to work with the governor to make sure we have the support that we need. I also think at kind of nuts and bolts issues, we can do a lot of education of the county staff and provide areas where the staff feel really safe and educated about what they can do in the event of ICE showing up, for example. And we can lead these trainings and so that people feel like they have a little more information, because I think when you don't have information, that's when the fear really sets in. So those are just some of the steps I would take. Thanks.
This is from a grandmother of 5. One of my highest concerns is for my grandkids' future, especially as regards the obvious need for clean, healthy water, soil, and air, and for a stable, livable climate. What experience do you have working with environmental justice and a healthy, thriving world for our children and grandchildren?
Well, I do work at the Climate Jobs Institute, so I care a lot about this issue. I think it's important that we see climate as an issue that touches on gender, race, equity. It is not simply this existential environmental question. And so we need to address it in many different ways. I do help with the city implementing its Green New Deal plan. I think that's fantastic. The county also has a sustainability plan. I've met with the county sustainability officers to talk about some of the goals and to think about the ways that we can try to help decarbonize, so help get people off of fossil fuels and also bring more renewable energy projects into the county, which will both create jobs and expand the tax base and also help people offset the costs of energy, which I know are skyrocketing. So those are just some of the ways that I would focus on it. I also think we need to address things like flooding and address some of the sort of resiliency issues. I know that we have a new flood map.
I'll just finish. So we have a new flood map, and we really do need to develop in ways that acknowledge that our forebears built our city on a swamp, and Mother Nature is slowly trying to reclaim that swamp, while at the same time addressing our needs as a community. Moreover, moving forward, we really do need to ensure that we are building into the future, into a 21st century future, into a future where we are going to live sustainably. You know, I've been part of anti-fracking. I've done capstones on how to decarbonize residential areas, and it has been amazing to work with the great people of the Sustainability and Climate Justice Commission over the past year and a half. We can do better for climate here locally. And we can provide an example of what it can look like for counties and cities across America and the world.
The resilience and energy independence of the county increases as more of us adopt renewable energy. What resources or policies are available to the county to counter the harmful reversal of support for renewables at the federal level?
I mean, not going to lie, it is a challenge. And it's one that I think we are all going to struggle to face. Municipalities were looking at, I mean, the city of Ithaca was looking at real possible success on our climate plan and being carbon neutral by 2030. I do not think that that is realistic at this point, thanks to how things have developed on the federal level. What we need to do is seek every resource we can. And a lot of groups are trying to substitute and fit in and find ways to substitute to make up for what we're losing on the federal level. I also believe in New York State not just giving in to everything the federal government does. I do have that confidence in our state level representatives and state government. And I hope and pray that this is a 4-year challenge, not the end of.
Sorry, I can't finish your sentence.
Yes, I think you can finish your sentence. We're not going to knock your head off.
Not the end of addressing our environmental crisis.
Good. So part of the issue is that we don't have enough publicly owned renewables and energy in general. And New York State does have the opportunity to do that. They passed a law a couple of years ago that would allow us to build more public renewables. There is a New York Power Authority that could do so. In their plan, Tompkins County does not make the list of the top 37 planned projects. We should be one of those projects, right? We have some great opportunity, but we also need to invest in the grid. And that is a major challenge because nobody wants to spend that money, millions of dollars, to invest in transmission, but it needs to happen in order to be able to get the power from where we generate it to the people who need it. I think we can look at some community-based programs, and there is funding for this through other opportunities, whether it's state or private grants. We should be seeking out any and all opportunities to help decarbonize and reduce costs for our residents.
We have several questions here about experience. Can you give an example of a group you were in where there were knotty problems requiring compromise on all sides. Can you describe this group and also tell us about how you think your actions on the group were helpful?
And what was the something problems?
Where there were knotty problems.
Knotty?
K-N-O-T-T-Y.
Oh, okay, naughty, like a tree. I just wanted to check on that.
Sorry.
Santa's coming.
Yeah, great, sure. So I've worked in a lot of groups in leadership type roles. I can think of an example of working with a coalition of mostly unions and state legislators to write a bill that was ultimately passed in another state, where we wanted to create good, high quality jobs, but we also wanted to create some offshore wind projects. And so we were thinking about how can we meet everybody's needs of, in this state, they didn't want offshore wind too close to the coast because that could endanger the fishing industry. So we were listening to them, but then we also wanted to make sure that we would have a way to bring it to shore. And then that the jobs that we created were going to pay a prevailing wage, that workers were going to have health insurance, that this was going to be local jobs. They weren't coming in from out of state. And so that's an example of having to take all these pieces of information and conflicting sometimes interests and put them together into something that is ultimately a successful state law.
So 2 separate times I have served now on the city's Committee on Committees. I know, I hear you, but it's actually very important to reevaluate how community participation in government can be expedited and made more effective. And it is a very challenging issue when you get into it. Many times people have pet projects, people have pet goals that they want to see implemented in our local government and have a committee that is devoted to it. I think before the first Committee on Committees that I served on, we had more than 40 different advisory committees in the city of Ithaca, some of which were defunct, some of which were weird and autocratic. We worked with these groups and built a new committee and commission structure that I believe better serves the community.
How will you work with Cornell and Ithaca College in the current political climate?
I mean, by working with them. In the end, our universities are under attack, just like our municipalities. And I am of the opinion that we work with our universities best by treating them as what they are, parts of our community. Right? They deserve to be supported as members of our communities that are under attack. They also should be helping the rest of our community, much like how some of our municipal governments help each other. We have mutual aid in various areas. There are times when Cornell and Ithaca College, one or other, are struggling. There are times when the city is struggling. There are times when every one of us struggles. And it's up to our neighbors, our community, our friends, all of us to work together to make sure we're all okay. I think that applies in this situation.
Yeah, this is a challenging question because if you'd asked us 6 months ago, we might have said something very different. Now, having seen the vulnerable position that most universities, especially the Ivies, seem to be in, being targeted, it is very challenging. But I think that we need to look at what some of the other comparable towns are doing. What is happening in New Haven? What is happening in Princeton? What are the universities there doing with their communities? I think that generally the support that we have as the city and county is very small comparatively. There is no countywide pilot agreement, payment in lieu of taxes, in the way that there is through the city. So I think there's work to be done to look at what services are being used and whether there is adequate support for that. But at the same time, we do need to also support the universities and stand with them as they're facing these threats. They are major employers here, the major employer.
County legislators are asked to sit on committees. What committees are you best experienced to serve on?
Well, I'm very interested in a lot of committees. So I was making notes of all the committees I wanted, which is probably longer than 1 minute. But I think the planning, energy, and environmental quality would certainly be a fantastic fit for me. I also know that our current chair, Annie Corman, is going to be leaving. And so there will be some big shoes to fill. But I think it's important that we have folks who are familiar with working on climate-related issues, planning and sustainability. I also am interested in the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. I think that's really important because they are working with the city's unions, for example, in negotiations. I have a lot of experience with that. I've also represented management within a union. So I have worn both hats, and I think it's great that to be able to see both perspectives. And then I also would very much be interested in the Housing Economic Development Committee that oversees the IAED and the IDA and the Office of Employment and Training, because again, that touches on issues that I've spent a lot of time learning about and working on.
I know that you didn't ask what we wanted, you just asked what we should. And that, I could list most of the committees and what I want. In terms of best qualified, downtown facilities, probably public safety, probably government administration, stuff that would leverage my experience at the city level directly into county level issues. And I think the housing and economic development one as well. Obviously, I have immense interest in most of the committees, but yeah, those are probably the ones that I am best equipped by my experience to go into.
What is the most important issue the county faces, which you feel you have the experience to address?
Housing and cost of living. I sound like a broken record. It's because it remains a serious issue. I have done a lot of work on this over the past decade. I've studied it academically. I've worked on it on the ground. I've worked on it on the city level. I've worked on it on the county level. We need to approach this like it is an existential challenge to our community. One we can surmount, but one that we all need to pitch in and work together if we are going to surmount. That includes the towns, that includes the villages, that includes the city of Ithaca, and that includes the county. I think I'm well equipped to jump into that from my experience on council, my experience with the county, all around.
I think affordability is the major issue, and a lot of that comes down to the cost of housing, and a lot of that is driven by the taxes. The fact that we have 50% of of Ithaca paying for 100% essentially of Ithaca, and that is a huge burden. And I have already taken a lot of steps to try to understand this issue. And I think, you know, just during the course of my campaign, already understanding some options that we might have, and that feels like more movement than we've seen. So for example, I met with the county tax assessor's office and we spent hours going over this. And we saw that the burden of the taxes has shifted from majority commercial properties to majority residential properties. So it's not in your heads that, yes, we're getting taxed more than we had been. And things like we just want to put this out there. We've all seen our taxes go up on average about 60% in the past 8 years. Since 2020, fraternities haven't had their taxes go up at all. They've actually been saving money in that time. Can I rebut myself to have more time?
And we'll give Pierre the similar opportunity, yes.
Okay. I mean, if you want to but me and then.
Oh, I mean, you
Okay. Thank you. Music to a lawyer's ears. So I think that the fact that we haven't really done a deep dive into the options here, there are ways that we can actually set that balance. If we want to say, for example, we think it should be 50-50 commercial and residential. That's something that cities of Albany and Binghamton have already done. This is an option to us, available to us under state law. So I think that that's something we need to dig into more, and I would propose having a task force right away to dig into this issue and to try to figure out how we can make things more equitable.
So do you want to add anything, Pierre? No,
I mean, how many more questions do you have?
Not too bad.
not too many. I meant on that one issue. No, if you're having to think about it, no. Please describe how you go about learning about and reaching a decision on an issue in an area in which you are not an expert. How do you seek out and integrate the concerns of your constituents?
Learning about issues that we are not familiar with. Sorry, we were just trying to remember who's turning.
Yeah, so describe how you go about learning about and reaching a decision on an issue in an area where you have no expertise. And how do you seek out and integrate the concerns of your constituents?
This is such a great question. I'm glad that it was asked. I think it's really important, and it will come up a lot for any legislator because we just touched on some of the committees, but there's so many topics that are covered and nobody's an expert in all of these. We have incredible staff at the county level who can do a lot of that education. I would absolutely lean on their expertise. Also, my fellow legislators. I listen to people. I go to experts. I think I've referenced several different experts.
This is what I've been doing. And in terms of the unprecedented times we're living in, they are deeply personal to me. This is the world that this is the wording from past generations that I'm going to pass down. This is the life I've lived as a child of immigrants in this community. I think all of that has prepared me to not back down. I was the kid who would stand up to the classroom bully. I haven't stopped, nor do I plan to. Right? At times like this, at times of crisis, our community needs to stand together. We all need to stand up for each other. I will do so.
So I've been engaged with our community from a young age as well. I'm going to tell you more about my professional experience. I have been leading organizations and getting local level. I think that prepares me very well to both understand the framework and what is involved in legislating, as well as the process of doing the research and creating something that is really meaningful. Painter and researcher. These are very vital tools. And I also have personal experiences that I think are really relevant. And maybe you wouldn't know this about me, but I grew up on food stamps. I lived in Section 8 housing. Now I get to be a homeowner in Bell-Sherman, but that's a big change. And these are things that I can have empathy about, range of experiences of people in our county. I was a kid in Bell-Sherman. Now my kids are going to Bell-Sherman. I get to be a parent here. I was a child growing up here. I was a college student. Now I'm college faculty. So I think I bring a great range of perspectives as one kind of experience.
Thank you. And now for our closing statements. And these are in the same order as the opening statements. So Iris, you will start and you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. So whether you know me from my work at Cornell, Faculty Senate, Children's Garden, if you've seen me in the Sustainability Commission meetings for the city, or have coached your kids at Bell-Sherman running cross country, or you've seen me very friendly. Or if you just met me tonight or saw me online, I hope that you understand that I am really invested in this community. I believe so deeply in the potential, keep it that way. I will say that launching my campaign has brought me a new sense of connection to so many more people, and I've gotten to know hundreds more people just in the past few months. I did this, knocking all these doors because I believe in showing up for everyone. I believe that when you want to represent people, you have to earn it. And that's what I did. So I was out knocking doors in the sub-zero temperatures. Literally, my pen was frozen. The ink was frozen when I was getting signatures because I was out there early on in February doing what we had to do. My kids came too sometimes, which was fantastic. Rain, sleet, I was out there. And that's because, I think it's really important that you have someone who will work as hard as you do for this. I want this because I want to represent people, but I also want to listen. I'm going to show up and get things done. And that's not just during election season, that's all year. I know what it's like to balance your work and family, to have to stretch your budget. I'm a working mom. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a homeowner. When I walk into next year's budget discussions, I'm looking at my money in that pot. I'm not playing with someone else's money. I have skin in the game, and I really care about this. So I just want to say I'll be a legislator who listens, who shows up, who leads, and I won't be someone you just hear from at election time. Thank you.
I really hope that the answers that the community has gone to the questions over the course of this have been illuminating for everyone. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters and our local community and everyone who's watching this or is here in person. Look, we need to move forward. And what I'm hoping to do and what I'm asking you to help me do is continue the work that I've been doing at the city, at the Council of Government over years. Help me continue that work on your behalf at the county legislature. We have serious issues. We do. And as we address those issues, and we must address those issues, I hope to be a part of it. And I hope that you to offer the privilege of representing you. It is a challenge. I will not lie. Doing this work, standing up for the community week in and week out is not easy. But every time it is worthwhile. Thank you all.
Thank you both very much. Good luck. And thank you all to the audience. Now remember, you each, except for the youngster here, you each, two of them, you each have a vote. Now use it wisely. And remember, using your vote, you use your voice. And for the kids here, as soon as you're 16, you can register to vote. And you can vote for whatever person or position you want. So, good night and thank you for coming. Oh,
Oh, yeah. So on election day, there is going to be a special election to fill the period of time in between that special election and December 31st. Neither of us are running in the special election. We are running for the term beginning in 2026. Dan Nolan is the Democratic candidate for the special. To my knowledge, there are no other candidates on the ballot. Is there anything you want to add?
So basically, you're going to be voting twice for this seat. One is for the next 6 months, and there's only one person to vote for, and that's Dan Nolan. And then you'll be voting choosing between the two of us for the full 3-year term. So that's because he's just running to fill the seat from Susan Curry, who stepped down to run the library. So it is just a short-term election as well.
2 pieces of paper, 2 separate pieces of paper. It'll be 2 completely separate pieces of paper. Promise.
So thank you. It's the policy of the league not to do a forum for one individual. And we have what's called an empty chair policy. For instance, if this evening either Pierre or Iris had decided it was in their best interests not to turn up, we would have cancelled the forum. We would not have allowed the other candidate to speak to you all on their own. At the national level, sometimes the parties play games and won't turn up for candidate forums. But that's their right, unfortunately. But we will never support one party or one candidate. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that up.
You too.
Each saved a rebuttal.
Yeah, just in case.
Okay.